Okay, hi. Um, my name is Said Haruna, and we have
Chinyere
okay,
Chinyere
okay, and yeah, we are at the
Sanctuary NEEM Foundation.
okay, and yeah, basically this is the third episode for the video cast that we're doing, and I'll start by apologizing. We have a very temporary setup here at the sanctuary, so the video is a bit not as clear as we would want it to be, and then the sound might be a bit off, but just bear with us. So today we are going to be talking about mental health in Nigeria, some of the misconceptions we have about mental health, and some of the possible solutions or recommendations or whatever that we feel we can kind of implement to curb whatever problems that we're having in Nigeria. So before we go into the issue of mental health, I would like to start by kind of like asking what you do at the sanctuary, what you do at the foundation, what your work entails, and how all of that happens, and what you guys do.
Okay. So I'm a clinical psychologist. Basically, what my work entails here is being able to provide psychological and psychosocial support to the everyday Nigerian who's struggling with some form of emotional or behavioral challenge. Um, a lot of what we do here is just psychological work.
Okay.
And then as a foundation, we also offer psychological and psychosocial support to people that are the victims of the insurgency in Medjugorje. So we have projects that we run in Medjugorje that seeks to support the people psychologically, um, in getting them back on their feet and getting them to live productive lives.
Okay, I think we're going to get to that at some
Okay.
point because yeah, I sent you a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's all over the place, but I asked people around what their opinion was
Okay.
about mental health in Nigeria and what they thought I should ask,
Mhm.
and I just put together everything that people might want to have answered for them. So
Okay.
the answers that the suggestions that I got, or like the yeah, suggestions and questions that I got that people proposed for me to ask, I found that a lot of people say that there's a lot of misconception associated with illness in Nigeria, especially because Nigeria is tends to focus a lot on religion. So a lot of things is kind of like attached to religion. So a lot of people associate mental illness with religion. So you have a lot of people that might be have mental health disorders that people assume maybe it's some form of spiritual possession or something like that. So
Yeah.
a lot of people talk about that. So what do you think? Why do you think that is?
Yeah.
And in your experience, how have you been able to, especially in maybe rural communities, change that perception?
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's one of the misconceptions that feed into the wrong information about mental health in Nigeria.
Yeah.
And because we come from a society that places so much, we have so much, we give so much. What am I looking for? There's a lot of power, so to speak, we've given to religion. So everything we explain it, we understand everything from that sense. Everything should be.
Yeah.
It has to be understood from a religious point of view. The truth is that religion has its part to play in the identity of who we are as Nigerians.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we want to be able to strike a balance where we say mental health is mental health and religion is religion.
Anything that maybe if someone isn't successful enough, people associate it with lack of faith or religion.
Yeah.
If someone is suffering from anxiety or depression, they also associate it to that. So the question is, I guess, for someone of your profession, how do you manage to educate people to disassociate
Yeah.
these things, especially in rural communities?
Mhm.
How do you go about doing that, and what are some of the challenges that
Yeah.
you've met so far?
Okay. So unfortunately, there's a lot of power, or we've given religion a lot of religion is placed on a very high pedestal for us as a society, as
Yeah.
Nigerians, and so a lot of things that we don't understand we associate it with religion. So it has to be because you are not following the rules of the Bible, or the Quran, or whatever, or ruler, or whatever has been set out there. And for a very long time, this has been the code of conduct. The way we understand things, the way we see things. But then when you look at understanding mental health, you begin to see that there are other perspectives that people bring from outside Nigeria that says, but hey, some of these things can be behavioral, some of these things can be emotional, some of it can be cognitive. It's not necessarily that you have failed to do certain things or you have been cursed or things like that that we Nigerians assume. Mental health is not categorically, I will state, is not as a result of faulting on a religious line or not keeping in line with what has been stipulated by tradition.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I don't want to take away the fact that faith and our belief have a role to play in who we are as a society.
Yeah.
And sometimes, even in therapy, we look at things that people hold dear to them, their beliefs and their faith that carry them along, and we begin to look at how we can put it in a more goal directed, positive light to help them because you can't take that away from the person. It's who we are. So we have to try and find a way to use a faith-based approach in helping somebody because if you look at it, there's some positive to it.
Yeah.
And we can always tap into that. So we can't necessarily say it has no place. It has a place, but there has to be a line that has to be drawn that says religion, faulting on the religious line or traditional rule is not the reason for a mental health challenge or for any challenge.
Yeah. So what is like, have you been able to make any progress in terms of getting some people to disassociate? That's because some people, true and true in Nigeria, would tell you that they've probably had spiritual attacks,
Yeah.
and you can't really take it away from them because I think we're in a society that we actually believe that these things happen. But just because spiritual attacks happen or Nigerians perceive it as something that happens, also there's also the psychological aspect of things. So my own is how are you able to say, okay, this person, how are you able to separate
Yeah.
that so that they know that it's not everything is always black and white. Sometimes it might be spiritual as people say, and sometimes it might actually be mental
Yeah.
health issue.
I mean, there are a lot of things that we can't explain in life.
Yeah.
I promise you, it's hard sometimes, even now,
Yeah.
when you go into, because we do a lot of work in the Northeast, and then you go into there and people are holding on to these beliefs that they had a spiritual attack. And the thing is, you can't come up to them and bash them and say,
Yeah.
oh no, this is wrong, that is right. You have to listen to them and you have to offer them alternatives and say, could it be this? Could it be that? So it's not me telling you that your religion is wrong or what you believe is wrong. I'm just saying, could it be something else?
So
If
the
you look at
approach,
it,
the how you talk to them matters as well.
definitely. So
Okay.
you may not necessarily have an immediate shift,
Yeah.
but you've given somebody something to think about.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. So in that aspect, going on from there, another thing that I found is even from a very early age, like a lot of people that I know have had personal experience with this. Growing up, there might be children who grow up with ADHD and things like that. And in Nigeria, especially like the go-to, I think things are starting to change a bit. I'm not sure, but before, like the go-to solution to problem is beat the child. Some children might be they learn slower. Some people might actually have mental health issues and things like that. And we don't have facilities to cater for children like that, and we don't pay as much attention. We don't believe. We just think that children are either smart or dumb. Um, how do you think, like, what progress is being made in that aspect, and how do you think that mentality can be changed?
There is some amount of change that is coming in. You have lots of foundations now that are paying attention to children and the challenges that they have growing up, developmental challenges.
Yeah.
And so there is some light being shed on that.
Yeah.
The extent to which it is, broadcasted or spread is very slim. So some people in some parts of the country are still not of the belief that there's possibility that the child could have a mental health challenge. It has to be that this child is a stubborn child or a naughty child. But I must give credit to the people who are doing the work and who are bringing that awareness around. That sometimes it's not the child is not necessarily being naughty or stubborn. It's because there's something that's different about that person. Maybe they see the world a little bit different from other people do, and it's about helping them, guiding them, going forward.
Yeah. So let's say I have ADHD.
Mm-hmm.
or maybe I have a child that has ADHD. What are some of the solutions that I can like use to not only make him or her understand that they're just like any other person, but to help them cope and make them, catch up to
Yeah.
whatever they might be losing out. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what are some of the things that I should do?
Yeah.
Solutions to that.
Okay. So when we talk about ADHD, first of all, we're looking at attention
Yeah.
deficit hyperactivity disorder. So there are two things. There's attention deficit and then there's hyperactivity. So solution for you, but first of all, when you notice some of these things in your child, seek for professional help immediately. Go for an assessment, and then they'll be able to tell you how best to support the child. As the parent, you'd have to work within the confines of what the child is able to do. You can't now say because because you have this way, I have to force you to be like every other child. You have to be able to work at the child's pace. You have to
Yeah.
be the guardian, you have to be the support, you have to be the comforter, you have to be the mom, that everything. You have to be the one that's helping the child form and develop, because society may not be very accepting of these people,
Yeah.
and you may be the world to them. So first of all, seek professional help and support. You don't have to compare your child with anybody.
Yeah.
Your child is totally different from other people, not in a bad way. It's just they see things different.
Yeah.
They will behave different. So you can, by the time you seek help, definitely support is very essential in helping your child.
Okay. So actually, I think this is the first thing I should have asked.
Okay.
What is the definition of like a mental health disorder? And ADHD and all those things, they fall under that.
Developmental, yes.
Yeah, and what is the definition for someone like me or any other person that doesn't really know what mental health is? Because I guess if we have a good understanding of what it is, it might help us cope better or have better solutions.
Understand this, yeah.
Yeah, what would we define mental health?
So as simple as possible, when you talk about your mental health, you talk about components of how you think, how you feel, and how that affects the way you behave.
Yeah.
So your mental health is encompassing of your emotions, your cognitions, and the way you behave. So your behavior. So anything that affects your ability to think or affects your ability to think, impacts negatively on your emotions, and then subsequently your behavior is affecting your mental health. And what that does to you is that it stops you from being able to be productive. It limits your ability to live a healthy daily life and your function in society.
Mm. Okay. So, how can we equip our teachers, our educators, our leaders, like our pastors, imams, all those people to better manage mental health issues in institutions, schools, communities? How can we equip them?
Yeah.
And what is being done currently in Nigeria? Because I guess you work a lot around that, so you would know. You have some experiences. Anything that is legal for you to state.
Yeah. So a lot of the things that we try to do
Yeah.
is advocacy.
Yeah.
You can't overemphasize the need for advocacy. There are lots of mental health advocates out there. We are mental health advocates and mental health practitioners in our own right. So what we do is advocacy, advocacy, advocacy. But the thing is, this news is not going everywhere. It might be going around, but people are not taking it. So we have to keep going at it. You might say the same thing over and over and over again. Because if you look at it, there's this stigma around mental health. There's just this, it's bad, labeled on it.
In Nigeria.
In Nigeria, especially in Nigeria, it's worse here because we've had years of stereotype or stigmatization against people with mental health challenges. We've labeled them as the outcasts of the society. We've ostracized them. We don't take care of them. You see them just left to their own, and even the treatments that they give them are just not humane. They treat them like they're not human beings. They just treat them like the outcasts of society. So there's a lot of negative connotations to mental health.
Yeah.
And people don't even see it for what it is. The truth is that so many people are dealing with a mental health challenge. They're going to work, they are functioning very well, but then they're still suffering with a mental health challenge. It's not. You'll be surprised how many professionals are dealing with a mental health challenge. You'll be surprised how many bosses, how many people, are dealing with mental health challenges. So it's not always that madman on the street running around. It's really, that is like a fraction, a small bit of what encompasses mental health. It's
That
everyday person. My inability to relate with you
yeah.
can be as a result of a mental health challenge I have.
Mm.
My inability to stick to something could be that. Inability to manage stress,
Yeah.
my anxiety, worries, all those things are encompassing of everyday mental health challenge. So anything that affects your ability to think through, anything that negatively affects your emotions, anything that even leads you into a negative behavior that affects your ability to function within the context of your society is affecting your mental health.
Yeah. Actually, that brings me to the next question. But before we even go to the next question, it's the thing, like you said, it's like every day, from the CEO to whoever can have a
Mm-hmm.
mental health issue, and it's not necessarily someone like a mad person or something like that.
Yes.
So the thing is, Nigeria itself, the environment, doesn't it induce some of these things? It make like I would assume that if you are in an environment that enables you to prosper in all ways, are you less likely to suffer from some of these conditions? Because Nigeria induces, sometimes I feel like it induces some of these things because you're working maybe 9 to 5, you're not earning enough for your family. Um, there's issues like problems, issues down from the family unit and things like that. So much stress weighing on someone.
Yeah.
Uh, do you think, how will I even put this question? But
So the role of environment as a causal factor for mental health challenge.
yes, basically what I'm saying is, if we don't solve some of these other problems that we deal with every day in Nigeria, lack of security, all those things, is it, can we effectively deal with some of these mental health issues?
There isn't a definitive answer to that. Definitely environment does play a role in the cause of mental health. Whether is there's mental health in the abroad, I like to
Yeah,
say there's mental health
everywhere.
everywhere. Um, so it's not necessarily that if you are there you may not have it, or if you're here you will have it. I mean, there's a lot of pressure being in the society, being in this society, being here.
Yeah,
There's a lot of challenges that people go through. Perhaps if we did help with the basic, Maslow's basic hierarchy of wants. If some of those things are sorted, maybe
yeah,
we could be able to deal a little bit better with some of the challenges we're facing.
yeah,
Maybe.
yeah. But and a lot of Nigerians, when you talk about, especially adults, I don't know whether that is a way for us to cope.
Yeah.
But when you talk to Nigerians about mental health, a lot of people will tell you, I have a lot of other problems to deal with.
Yeah.
This whole mental health issue is not my concern.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people actually say that. Is that some form of I don't know. Is it a
Yeah.
coping mechanism, or again those things don't are things that I feel like they contribute back to stalling us in terms of progress. But at the same time, maybe it's like a way for people to cope. I don't know.
It could be. It could be. But the thing is, what is so difficult about mental health is because if someone breaks their leg,
Mm-hmm.
you can see it.
Yeah, yeah,
If someone has a wound across their face, you can see it. When we talk about mental health, they purely, you can't see them.
yeah,
They're invisible. So sometimes it's so easy for us to put it at the back end, especially when it's
yeah,
not affecting us there and then.
yeah,
The truth is that there's so much for people to worry about that
yeah,
it's so easy to forget, or it's so easy to just put it at the back end of, it's not affecting me, let me just carry on with my life. But if you break your leg, you can't go to work.
yeah,
If you're wearing a cast, you have to be in bed.
yeah,
But if you're, let's say, if you're dealing with an anxiety, you have like an anxiety disorder, and you're able to temporarily calm yourself and move on with life, that's what you're
it's
going to
easier.
keep doing. It's
Yeah,
easier to keep doing that and just put it at the back of your mind because it's not really affecting me right now, and there's so
yeah,
much I have to worry about. But like you said, again, it feeds into you not being able to seek help at the right time, and it feeds into inability, it feeds into the lack of the growth we have when it comes to
yeah.
dealing with mental health challenges.
Yeah, because I feel like there's a little bit of irony, especially in Nigeria, where we believe in God. We don't
Mm-hmm.
see God,
Yeah.
but we believe in God strongly.
Yeah.
And sometimes that belief in God, not that there's anything wrong with it,
Mm-hmm.
uh, kind of like stalls our capacity to actually look for help.
Yeah.
And we when people ask, okay, why do you believe in God if you can't see God? You know, if you are a religious person, you will be able to find an explanation. But then when it comes to mental health, which you need to check also, like you said, a lot of people will be like, it is not there, therefore it doesn't exist. And that same principle that we applied to believing in God that we can't really see,
Yeah.
we reverse it and apply it to mental health where we are like, because we can't see it, it doesn't exist. And so it
doesn't make sense. But then if
it
you have to
makes
look
things,
at it,
yeah,
what are the connotations when I say mental health, what pops to mind?
madman or something like that.
When I say God, what comes to mind?
Like peace, protection, and
Which one would you rather go for?
God. But I guess it's the connotations, I guess.
There's a lot of meaning
Yeah.
that we attach to it, so it's easier to just choose the one that's a bit more positive or favorable.
So why obviously I'm not a professional in this field, but is there a way for us to kind of start finding positive connotations attached to mental health in a way that I think a way to solve problem I find is instead of like maybe for someone does wrong, instead of saying this is what you did wrong, say okay, this is what you did right and this is what you can improve.
Yeah.
So if we find a way to kind of say okay, mental health is not bad. It doesn't mean you're terrible or you're dumb or you're anything. It just means that maybe you need to catch up in these aspects. If we can find a way to have that same positive connotations attached to mental health, the same way we have for higher beings. Do you think it's something that will be able to help a lot of people? And is this something that is being done?
Yeah. I mean, definitely, it's about changing the narratives around it. Yeah. Because there's a lot of negative, once I mention mental health, everybody just shuts down completely.
Yeah.
There's a lot of negative connotations around it, a lot of negative talk around it. So definitely, when we look at changing the narrative and we look at it for what it actually is, sometimes it's even the fear. We're too scared to even associate with it because I don't want it to tarnish my image. I don't want them to think, oh, I have this mad brother or sister or something. Whereas that's not what it is. When we begin to look at it for what it actually is, we realize that we all have some elements of challenge that we're dealing with as individuals. The fact that mine is not holding me back, or the fact that mine is not, you can't see how mine is affecting me, does not mean I don't have a mental health challenge I'm dealing with. The fact that I can't see yours does not mean it's not there. It's just that for some people, we can see theirs. And then we just label them as the bad ones. But so the moment we start to change the narrative and see it for what it is, it's not a curse. It's just something that happens, like every other physical symptom you go through, like a headache, like a broken arm, like a broken leg. It's a health challenge, and that's what it is.
I know mental health is pretty broad, like you said, so there are different aspects to it.
Yes.
Is there any form that is kind of progressive, which is like if you don't handle it from the onset, it will become full blown like serious issue. For example, if you don't clean a wound and it keeps getting infected and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Is it something that is also progressive? Some of it.
Yes. Actually, if we look at it, all of it can lead down that line.
Okay.
The truth is that a lot of mental health challenges can be treated.
Okay.
But then
With medicine or
so
psychosocial support or
so the treatment options are usually medication and or psychotherapy. So sometimes you can go with psychotherapy alone, and sometimes you need a combination of medication and psychotherapy.
Is medication good?
Medication has a role it plays.
But is it good in the long run?
I think, truthfully, that's a question most people do ask. Every medication, and because I think sometimes they're scared of all the side effects. There are lots of side effects that can happen to you. My truth is that all generation mental health medications have had a history of bad side effects. But now you're having new medications that they produce and that have little to no side effects. And the truth is that regardless of what medication you take, some of them you may react to. Some people react to chloroquine, some people react to Panadol, some people react to paracetamol, some people even react to vitamin C.
Yeah.
So it's about finding the one that works best for you, because medication has a role it plays in mental health.
So it's a chemical imbalance or something.
Exactly. That's what medication. So medication comes in there to deal with all that biological component of it. But then some of the mental health challenges that come with the emotional and behavioral component, medication can't fix.
Okay, so it's very, very, very important to have a distinction
Distinction between?
between the one caused by emotion and the one caused like the chemical.
So
So how does it work?
so
Sorry.
that's fine. So let's look at it this way. Let's say, for
Yeah.
example, when somebody has depression,
Yeah.
okay, usually the first call is not medication, especially when it's a mild to moderate form of depression. The first call is generally not medication, it's psychotherapy, it's the talk.
Yeah.
But then when depression goes to severe, then we look at adding antidepressants to it. Okay, so it depends on what the person is presenting with. If somebody is presenting with a full-blown psychosis,
Yeah.
therapy is not the first thing you do. The first thing you do is medication to get them to be mentally stable before you give therapy.
Yeah.
So it depends on what the person presents with. Both forms of treatment have a role to play. It's about identifying or diagnosing the person first, and then the mental health provider knows the exact treatment to go with first.
So it is very advisable for anyone watching this not to self-diagnose. That is
Definitely,
one.
definitely.
And don't go to WebMD.
Please don't.
Yeah, it's always better to get professional
Go
support.
to a professional,
Yes.
because there's some mental health challenges. There's like a thin line
Yeah.
that differentiates that, and that determines the type of treatment
Yeah.
that you will go with. So it's very important for you to also get right information on it. There's some information on the internet out there. We have to give it to the internet.
Yeah.
There is information out
You
there.
have to be careful. As well.
Exactly. You have to be extremely careful and rather go to a professional for the person to have like the right diagnosis.
Do we have enough centers, or do we even have centers in Nigeria?
Well, you have the sanctuary.
Yeah. Well, we have this.
Yes.
But relative to the number of people affected,
We don't have enough centers in comparison to the number of people that need
Yeah.
help. We don't have enough.
okay, we'll get to that in terms of like numbers and stuff like
Okay.
that. But I was talking to someone, and they also mentioned something about like as with drugs, when a mom is unfortunately addicted to crack or heroin, she can pass that addiction down to her infant child. Is there any form of like chemical imbalance that can be passed down to your child? Like if the mom is dealing with something, she gives birth to a new born baby, can it be passed down and baby grows up with this mental health?
Yeah. Some mental health challenges have genetic, they have a genetic link to it. Some people genetically are predisposed to some mental health challenges.
Like bipolar?
Yes, like bipolar can, like schizophrenia, it can have some genetic links to it. Even depression, there could be some genetic links to it. It does not necessarily mean that because your dad or your mom or your brother or sister has bipolar, it will follow down. Sometimes it even dies down with, like it can die down, or it can skip or whatever it is. It doesn't necessarily mean that it will always pop up, but there is a very strong
Possibility.
yes, that genetics do. It's actually one of the causal factors. When we do assessments, we try to find out if there's a history in the family, because that's a very strong indicator of some mental health challenges.
Okay. So how, for example, for bipolar, it's quite I don't know how to put it, but bipolar disorder is something that uh, how do you gauge if someone has bipolar, and how do you manage? Because maybe some people might just have short temper and or they function normally, and then they short tempered people. But then some people, bipolar, like how are you able to know?
Diagnosed bipolar.
Like if let's say you know someone and you want to help that person get help, how do you what are some of the key identifiers of?
Yeah. Okay, I think first of all, I must start by saying that there's some symptoms that we all share as human beings. And one of the things that makes people get diagnosis is the moment those symptoms that you're presenting will begin to affect your life, your ability to function.
Yeah.
The moment it begins to affect that, then we have a challenge. We have a severe challenge that needs to be addressed. Sometimes people just come in for, pick me ups here and there. But when it gets to the point that it's affecting your ability to even work, to study, you can't concentrate, you can't live a normal life, then you seek help.
Yeah.
When we talk about bipolar, we're looking at a mood disorder. It has two poles. So the bipolar is duopolar, two poles. So
Okay.
there's the mania,
Yeah.
which is the high mood, elevated mood, excessively high behavior, easily angered. Sometimes they can have psychosis. There's a lot of high energy with them. They have very brilliant ideas sometimes. They're very grandiose sometimes in the way that they think and they speak. They don't even sleep. They have so much energy going. Someone who's manic can go 2 days, 3 days without sleeping and still have so much energy to keep going. Some of them can even engage in risky behavior when they're manic. And then you have the other pole, which is the depressed pole, which is the sadness, the low energy. It's the total opposite of bipolar, of mania. So that's why we say it's a bipolar. Some people, there's a middle part where it's the hypomania. It's a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It's somewhat okay, but it still leans a bit more towards the manic episode that people experience.
Mm.
So what happens with bipolar is for you to, sorry, what's your question again? I
No,
totally lost
how do you? No problem. How are you able to identify someone who has bipolar?
Okay, so first of all, you look at the presenting symptoms the person
Yeah.
has. If the person is presenting with certain symptoms that are in keeping, or if the person's behavior is making you question, you're beginning to question, okay, this is not normal. Remember, sometimes most behaviors that you see go out of the range of the things that you would expect of the person or the things that people generally do
Yeah.
in the society. So you can, once you see that those things are just not, there's something not right. We always know when there's something not right.
Yeah.
It's important to actually start to seek help or speak to somebody just to clarify, speak with the person even just to clarify how things are going.
Okay. So now we're in the social media era.
Okay.
And
It's everywhere.
yeah, and like personally, maybe I'm a bit of a traditionalist, but I feel like social media has some effects,
Mm-hmm.
positive and negative, obviously, as with
Definitely.
everything. But I feel like I don't know. I don't have any stats or facts to back this up, but like social media kind of has a role to play in the increasing amount of um, like depression and stuff and anxiety that we're seeing because you have a lot of people, especially people growing up, they're on social media, they're seeing all the happy aspects of other people's lives, and their
Mm-hmm.
lives isn't going as well for them.
Yeah.
They start to worry and stuff like that. So now a lot of people are kind of living because they want validation. They don't get that validation, it affects their mood. How much of an effect do you think social media is having? Is it negligible or is it something that we should definitely watch?
Yeah. I mean, like you mentioned, I don't even also have a stat on it. However, you do have clients who come in and there's certain things they say, you begin to see, okay, you're letting, another person's life impact on yours because you're comparing, and then you forget that a picture is just a moment in the entire journey of the day. The person could literally just take that picture and then they're collapsing because they're tired or
Yeah.
something, and you think, oh my goodness, they're having such a good time, they look so beautiful, blah, blah, blah. And then we begin to compare. We develop complexes, which can lead to severe mental health challenges, anxiety, depression, even eating disorders. People begin to develop most of these things that because you compare yourself too much to other people instead of looking at your own life and focusing on the things that you have now, the positives. The truth is that we're not all where we want to be.
Mm.
That's the truth.
But how would you even
But
convince people?
but the thing is, there's something positive about where you are at now.
Yeah,
The things that you can work on to get to where you want to be.
yeah.
It's one step at a time. We're all on different journeys. I can't run your race. I have to run my own race.
So how do I convince? Let's say I have, hypothetically speaking, a friend that is worried that all her friends are married and she doesn't even have a suitor, and
Yeah.
she's always on social media looking at all these pictures. How do I help that person
How do you help
not
that person?
not disturb herself too much?
Yeah.
For example,
Okay. Maybe we can start by trying to find the person, somebody. Okay, that's such a silly example. But then I think there's a lot of that going on. Lots of young ladies.
yeah,
There's a lot of stress on society saying, oh, you have to get married at a certain age. You have to do this. You have to do that. But it's not always like that. It's
mm,
not. Life doesn't always work that way. The thing, even when it comes to the
yeah,
dating world, some of us lock ourselves inside and expect
yeah,
husband to come from heaven or wherever husbands come from. I think you have to be proactive, first of all. You have to be proactive. Um, not to sound cliche, but you have to put yourself out there.
Yeah.
You have to go to where young people go to. You have to meet people, and try and see maybe you can find somebody,
Yeah.
you know. But yeah, everyone has to understand that life is not such straightforward. We don't go from study to job to marriage to
Yeah.
children. It doesn't always happen that way.
So, is some of the mental health issues are they self-inflicted?
Some of them can be. Some of them can be.
But the self-inflicted ones, like we talked about earlier, they can some mental health is progressive. If you self-inflict, is it possible for it to progress?
Definitely, things like
So yeah.
yeah, sorry about
No, no, no,
that.
no.
So if you look at things like anxiety, excessive worry,
Yeah.
excessive fear over a perceived a perceived threat that's
Yeah.
actually not there. So some of them is the way you see things, the way you what you believe about something, the
Mm.
meanings you attach to it. So the fear, I think, is actually not scary, but it's the way you see it that now builds a vicious circle of anxiety. Some of it can also be linked back to your background, your childhood, this and that. But at the end of the day, in working with someone who's anxious, we try to get them to actually. Sometimes you have to confront that threat
Yeah.
and let's see if it's actually as serious as as you think it is. Then we teach you like coping mechanisms, like relaxations, and start to begin to change your belief systems around some things. And
Yeah.
so by doing that, we're able to also teach you to, curb your anxiety or manage your anxiety.
Okay. So like this conversation, it's kind of like all over the place. We spoke about a lot of different things
Yeah,
because clearly mental health is something that you can't talk about in just 30 minutes
yeah,
and have a like comprehensive conversation. But it's always good to kind of get some questions answered. Um, like this is my approach to work or anything in life. I feel like it's always good to kind of streamline things, even though some things don't need to be streamlined.
okay,
Like if we're trying to find solutions for people, it's always good to streamline and give people better definitions of what they're dealing with,
mm-hmm.
and then it helps. Do you think like something like mental health, especially in Nigeria, may be a possible solution? Not solution to the whole problem, but possible head start would be to kind of like we said earlier, maybe streamline what mental health is, get people better definitions and get people to better understand.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that is something that is a good idea and should be done in more more frequently?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, mental health literacy in Nigeria is just low. It's poor. So there is need for us to begin to understand it for the truth that it is.
Yeah.
A lot of things that we have against mental health is just lack of information. There's a fear, and
Yeah.
we don't have the truth about it. Some of it can be quite scary because when you see your loved one just act in ways that are not socially
Yeah.
acceptable, it can be quite scary. It can be it can be such a burden to some people.
Yeah.
But it's some of these burdens that we have to deal with, and we have to let's help the people around us. Let's
Yeah.
grow with them.
Okay. So last thing I want to ask is like is in Nigeria, do you have any like figures or statistics that can help people put into context how good or bad the issue is in terms of mental health?
Yeah.
Do we have any stats on people committing suicide because of some of these problems
Yeah.
and like in terms of the ratio of the number of people grossly affected by
Mental health
mental
challenges.
health to the number of specialists we have to deal with that.
Yeah.
Is there any stats? And how bad or good is
Hmm.
the stats?
Welcome to Nigeria, where we don't have stats that we can rely on. There's
Yeah.
so many numbers out there. It's hard to actually pinpoint. I think I read the WHO 2015 stats. For some reason, I trust it a little bit more because I feel
Yeah.
like they'll be a bit more thorough in
Yeah.
the work they produce. And it said 20% of reported cases. I think even that's part of our problem that some people are underdiagnosed and some people don't even come, so you don't even have a diagnosis of the actual number that's available. There's so many things that affect our ability to even get statistics in the first place. But the stats is everywhere. You see some places you see thousands, some places you see millions. So I can't.
Yeah, it's always contradictory and conflicting.
Yeah, so I can't tell you that there's a specific number that has been put out there.
Isn't it a good idea for us to start by getting those
getting those
stats.
data. That would be good.
And how do you go about doing that? Because
Maybe what you can do is you can start with going to mental health facilities and mental health
or
centers.
communities.
Exactly, even or churches. People go to churches when they have mental health challenges,
Yeah.
so they can also give you numbers. But yeah, or get data from communities.
Yeah.
Even go just start to do like a proper sweep of the entire country, and you get like a better
So
idea.
let's say for people like us that have no experience in terms of mental health support, or we're not professional psychologists, and we want to help to build a database of people living with these issues so that we can find solutions for them or help for them.
Yeah.
What kind of advice would you give us in terms of what we should look for and how we should collect our data?
I think the person should firstly have like a run through understanding of mental health,
Mm-hmm.
know what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would even best to work with a professional too that can also guide what you have, and then the questionnaire that you use to get your data needs to be standardized, something that can be applicable to everyone in the country so that you can get accurate information. Yeah, I think those are the few that pop to my head right now that I
Okay.
can say. So, but basically, work with a team of experts, go to places where people generally be, go to communities, go to schools, go to churches, go move around, get questions, get ask questions and get
Yeah.
accurate information. And maybe we
Okay.
can build our database from there.
Okay. Let's say I have a mental health issue, and this is just like any day for you. Right? And I come home like, okay, I have problem, I have too much stress, or I have bipolar anxiety. What is the first thing that you would tell me to
The
to
first
do?
thing I'll tell you to do.
Yeah, or how, like, yeah, this is me telling you I think I might have some mental health issues
Yeah.
and have serious anxiety or
Mm-hmm.
bipolar. So what is the first thing that I should know?
Okay, so I'm going to separate it because if you come with both, if you come with anything you come with, there's a different
Yeah.
treatment plan you get. So let's go with anxiety, for example. So if you
Yeah.
present with anxiety, and then I take all the information from you, I get your history, I find out all the details of when you usually get anxious, what are your triggers, what have you done in the past to help curb your anxiety, what are the things that feed into your anxiety, what are those beliefs that feed into your anxiety. I'll
Mm.
try to pick everything. I'll try to look at the emotional components. I'll try to look at biological components, the social components, and try to understand why this thing is causing what it's causing. And then another thing I'm going to do work on doing is teaching you coping strategies,
Mm.
teaching you calming techniques, teaching you to be very aware of your triggers and what the trigger does to you. And then we can start with doing like some cognitive restructuring, start to get you to see things, give alternatives, and teach you how to better deal with your stressors. Because at the end of the day, you find that most stressors are everywhere. You can't run from them. You can't hide from them. It's about learning to manage it.
Yeah.
And then so we'll teach you to manage it.
Okay. And then the last thing is just anything that you have to add, like in terms of, so anything I didn't ask, or anything that you think people should know about, that
Yeah.
maybe any misconceptions or anything that I think people should know that we
Mm-hmm.
haven't asked but talked about.
I think you've gone round a couple of points, but it's very important for people to know that mental health is not it's not a curse.
Mm.
It's not something that you have done to deserve it. It's just like every health challenge you deal with. It's a health challenge. That's what it is.
Okay.
It's just that we can't see this one, but it's as good as the cancer. It's as good as a broken leg. It's as good as an eye problem, a toothache. It's just a health challenge.
Okay. And anyone watching this and yet currently dealing with something, what would you tell
Exactly.
them, like?
Anyone who's currently dealing with a mental health challenge, I think firstly it's important to look for a professional that you can speak to.
Don't be
Sometimes,
afraid to.
exactly, don't be afraid. I mean, like you've mentioned, fear sometimes is what keeps them from coming up because sometimes they don't want to feel judged. Some people
Yeah.
tell you, "Oh, I don't want you labeling me or knowing my story." But then, if you have a mental health challenge and you keep on hiding it, you're letting it have control over you. You would need to have to step up and have control over it
Mm.
by owning it, by being able to manage it yourself, not letting it manage you. Because after you can cover it and cover it and cover it and cover it. After a while, it will begin to show.
Mm.
But when you begin to now take steps to manage it yourself, take control over it,
Yeah.
you'll be able to do better.
Okay. So I think that does it for now. I'm very sure if anyone has any questions, they will be able to ask. So
Yeah.
maybe you want to give them details about name or who they can contact, or
Yeah.
like where do they who they can contact, or
Okay.
that in terms of name.
Yeah. I think if you want to come and see us, we have our website
Okay. Yeah, we'll add that as well.
www.neemfoundation exactly.org.ng. A lot of our information is there, so you can just tell them you would like to speak with the psychologist. Well, we have an Abuja center, we have a Medjugorje center. So if you want to speak with the people in Abuja, you can speak with the person in Abuja. The sanctuary also has its own number. I'll give that to you that you can put up.
Okay.
So if people, we have social media handles, Facebook, Instagram. So if you'd like to follow and DM to give us to tell us what's going on, send us a WhatsApp message. We very much active and we would respond promptly.
And are there any centers that maybe partner centers, maybe in places like Kano, Kaduna, Wari, places like that, where people can.
Unfortunately, we don't have any partners that, well, not unfortunately, we actually don't have any partner centers that we work with. We are quite independent on our own. But as an individual, as a practitioner, I am very much aware of some centers in Abuja that people usually go to. Actually, yeah, I've worked in a couple of centers too, so I know.
So, okay, that's very good. And thank you very much for your time. And hopefully, this goes out and helps a lot of people with dealing with mental health issues, and we make progress, hopefully.
Yes, hopefully.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.